The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Are Ontario's newly proposed labour laws progress for workers, partisan positioning for an election, or perhaps both? Tonight, we'll consider the new Working for Workers Act, making its way through Queen's Park. Then, with a new minimum wage for restaurant waitstaff coming in the new year, can the sector and its servers find a way to thrive? We'll explore that. It's Wednesday, November 10th, and that's all ahead on the agenda. Ontario is poised to overhaul some of its labour laws. The bill, called the Working for Workers Act, is in the early stages, but even on the day it was announced, it attracted support from some of the big unions in this province. No small feat. With us now for more, all in the provincial capital, let's welcome in North York, Ontario, Smokey Thomas. He's the president of OPSEU, the Ontario Public Service Employees Union. In the annex, Sheila Block, senior economist with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. And in Midtown, Martin Redcon, political columnist for the Toronto Star. And it's great to welcome you three back to our airwaves here on TVO tonight. Let me just take a moment off the top, and for those who didn't follow all of this as carefully as you three have, just give some of the highlights of this new act. The Working for Workers Act promises to require employers with 25 or more employees to have a disconnect from work policy. More on that in a bit. Ban the use of non-compete agreements. Remove barriers, i.e. Canadian experience requirements, for internationally trained individuals to get licensed in a regulated profession, and require business owners to allow delivery workers to use a company's washroom if they're delivering or picking up items. Okay, let's just get as Martin Redcon would say, a tour d'horizon of opinion here on what we think about this. Smokey, what do you like about what this bill is attempting to do?
Well, I think it's trying to bring some reasonableness into many workplaces. The disconnect thing, I think working from home, some bosses have gotten to think that they can just email you, call you anytime, day or night. And if you sign on to work a 9-to-5 job, there's no reason for the employer to, unless it's an absolute emergency, to be contacting you after hours. So I think that's a very good positive move on the part of the government.
Sheila, your view. What's in here that you like?
You know, my overview of this bill is it's kind of like a donut with sprinkles. At first bite, it tastes really good, but afterwards, it really leaves you hungry. I don't think that there is enough of substance in this bill, and I don't think it actually kind of addresses the fundamental issues, labor market issues that we're facing in this province.
Okay, we'll dive into your concerns as we continue our conversation. Martin, your read on it.
Well, I think people's heads are exploding that Doug Ford's Tories are suddenly doing this pivot pre-election, and I think we have to just get a grip. I mean, motives matter, but you don't have to have purity. And so there's a lot of symbolism in here, as I think Sheila would argue, and not as much substance as all of us would like. But at the end of the day, the outcomes also have to be measured. And we are further ahead now than we were a couple of weeks ago, and certainly than we were 3 years ago. That said, we're going to remind everybody that Doug Ford's government kept us in place for the last 3 years. They last 2 years, I should say, 2.5 years, when they froze the minimum wage and they kept it at $14 instead of letting it go up to $15 as scheduled. But overall, I think people are surprised and people's heads are spinning that we've had this pivot, and I think there's some politics that has to be analyzed behind it.
Well, just follow up on that, if you would, Martin, for a second, because this government pledged from day one to be a business-friendly government. They changed the signs on the highways as you enter Ontario. Ontario's now open for business. Are these business-friendly policies from what is supposed to be a business-friendly government?
Well, on the surface, you would think that business would be apoplectic about this, but it isn't just the politics that's changing here. The economics has changed because of the epidemiology and COVID-19. I mean, we're now in the midst of a massive labor shortage. So employers have to pay more money for the most part, whether they like it or not. So in some ways, the Ford government is just catching up to where the economy is. And so, yeah, 3 years ago, it was open for business. and bad for union bosses, as the Ford government used to call elected union leaders. I know Smokey called company bosses, but most of the time they were calling him a boss, even though he's an elected leader. So, and all the leaders in Ontario. So I think there's some economics here happening, and there's some politics that is part of it. And business is complaining, but the reality is, for first of all, not everybody in Ontario makes the minimum wage. The numbers are actually much smaller than people realize, but it is a floor, it is a benchmark, and it does raise wages for a lot of workers. Certainly in the retail sector, in supermarkets, even unionized workers have a minimum wage plus clause built in. Point is, I think business saw this coming, and business is already having to pay up. That's how economics often works.
Let's circle back to the first bullet point that we listed earlier in the program, and this disconnect from work policy, which is getting a lot of attention. Smokey, you referenced it first. My suspicion is you do not have the kind of job where every night at 5 p.m. you're simply able to turn your computer off and say, I'm not taking any more emails from anybody until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So my question is, can this really work?
Well, I knew what I was getting into. Well, mostly knew what I was getting into when I ran and became president. So I understand it's 7 days a week. My phone's always on. I answer my cell phone. But again, if you're working in an office, and I think there's been creep here with technology. So a lot of people now, send out emails at 8 o'clock at night. Well, if it's from your boss, what I hear from people is you're going to be compelled to reply to that, or at least, get the feeling you have to check in. So I myself have tried not to email our employees or after hours unless I really have to, or on weekends. And if I do, if it's something I don't want to forget on Monday, I'll just put in there, please don't address this till Monday. But it's creeped into a lot of workplaces, and we hear that from my members that work in the government, work in all sorts of settings where they're now expected to be sort of, well, why didn't you answer that, respond to my email last night? So I think it's a good move. The separation between work life and work, you need that time off. A fool like me doesn't really live that way, but most people do.
Sheila, let me get your read on that. It's one thing to say in law, you as an employee don't have to respond to an employer who emails you at 8 o'clock at night. I wonder if the reality is the employer may look at you differently if you don't. What do you think?
I think that's absolutely the case. And we have to remember that the proposed legislation just says that you need a policy. It doesn't say it doesn't provide any of the details of the policy. And I absolutely think that, people will still feel compelled to answer that. And I think what would really be an incentive for employers is if there was a requirement to pay people if they were working past their usual hours. And I think that would change the equation much more than what's in the proposed legislation.
I'd like to know what would happen if Martin Redcon were to say to his bosses, you know what, journalism for me stops after 5 p.m. every day, and if you guys want me after that, you can pay me extra. How do you think that'd go over?
Well, I have to admit, I think all journalists have a serious bias on this question. I think it's hard for you and me and Smokey, for that matter, to be objective about this because, yeah, this is what we've been used to. But I think Smokey makes a good point, and Sheila too. This is what you and I signed on for, Steve. So when I call Smokey at 9 p.m., he's got to take the call unless he's mad at me, and he won't. But that's part of the deal. I think if you've signed on for a different kind of job, let's say economist for a left-wing organization, you didn't sign on for the 9 p.m. call. And I think Sheila's right. If you added in an economic deterrent, that would also level the playing field. But I do think this is a start, even though some of us I say we're amused by it. I think it's a serious issue. When my wife gets emails on a weekend, I hope her boss isn't watching, that changes, it soaks up bandwidth. And even if she doesn't reply until Monday morning, that's a problem. And a lot of people are now working Sunday night to try to get ahead of a Monday start. And so this is a wake-up call, I think.
Well, two things I got to follow up there. Number one, when you talked about economists for progressive organizations not taking emails late at night, you should have seen Sheila's reaction, because my hunch is she takes plenty of emails late at night. And the second thing is, Smokey, I need to find out, are you mad at Martin right now, or will you return his calls at 9 p.m. if he calls later tonight?
Oh, no, Martin and I had a good chat yesterday. We'll return each other's calls.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. Let's talk about the minimum wage, because this has been one of the most spectacular, breathtaking 180s that the current government of Ontario has done. Sheila, to you first. The government of Ontario announced, unlike when it came into office 3+ years ago, that it would raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour starting in the new year. That is a change. What do you think of it?
I think it's too little too late. I mean, absolutely, is this better than leaving it with the 10-cent increase, 10-cent an hour increase that we saw, I guess, a few weeks before? It's absolutely good news, as you said, that they've raised it, but you have to look back and see what has the impact been of that 3-year delay. And in my shop, we did some estimates, and even with the big reduction in work and big reduction in hours for minimum wage workers who, really took a bad hit through the pandemic, this cost them cumulatively, we estimated, $1.7 billion. So over this time where low-wage workers were, in dangerous situations, letting those of us who could work from home safely, and they lost out on a lot of money at that point. And so I think that's absolutely a concern. But, would I say better late than never? Of course.
I think the math on that works out to something like $3,000 to $6,000 per employee who would have been eligible for a $15 minimum wage had it come in 3 years ago when the previous government had planned it. And that, as they say, is real money. Smokey, you were at the news conference where the Premier and a couple of his ministers unveiled this policy. We want to show a little snippet of what you had to say on that day, and then we'll come back and chat. Sheldon, if you would.
For the first time in dealing with 3 governments, we actually have a government that is listening and actually doing some very positive things for working people. I truly believe that it'll be up to the people of Ontario to decide on that, come the next election. But the good things that, Minister McNaughton, Minister Bethlen-Falvey, and Premier Ford are doing for working people are not lost on me.
I presume the 3 governments you were referencing there were Dalton McGuinty, Kathleen Wynne, and now Doug Ford's. And I guess my question for you is, did you really mean to say what you said in that clip?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you why. I went all the way back to the NDP government under Bob Rae. I fought tooth and nail with the NDP government back then over their attack on institutions, psychiatric hospitals, other institutions. Then along came Mike Harris, who was nobody's friend but business. And then we had Dalton and Kathleen, and who really was an austerity agenda for 15 years. They shrunk the public service by tens of thousands of workers. They did their own series of wage controls. I couldn't get a meeting with Dalton McGuinty for the life of me until they wanted us to take 2 years of zeros. Kathleen Wynne and I really, on a personal level, I really like Kathleen. I agreed with the social changes she was doing, but she bought into that austerity agenda. And when Ford first got elected, I said some pretty nasty things about the guy. But he's listening now. So, he's listened to us on many, many issues. So I've always been one to give credit where credit's due. When the Liberals did something good, I said they did something good. So Steve, I'm nonpartisan. So, it should not be taken as a ringing endorsement for the Progressive Conservatives, because I don't endorse any political party. I think there's good people in all the parties and some not so good people in the parties. And I'll fight with them when I need to. But again, I'll give credit where credit's due, in my view.
Martin, when you heard Smokey Thomas say, of the last 3 governments I've dealt with, this is the first one that's actually listening to us, et cetera, what went through your mind?
I think he was giving us a history lesson. I don't always agree with Mr. Thomas, but the fact is people have this illusion about the previous governments on the minimum wage. My newspaper, the Toronto Star, fought for years to get Dalton McGuinty to lift effectively a freeze on the minimum wage. And when the Liberals finally moved it up to $11 an hour, the NDP under Andrew Horwath in opposition were playing footsie. They refused to state a target. For years we've heard people say we need a $15 minimum wage, but back then the NDP was silent. Why? Because they were afraid of alienating small business. They're always making a play for small business advocates, and they are always the loudest opponents of a minimum wage increase. So Kathleen Wynne, right? Like Smokey, I think she did a lot of progressive things, but she also froze or kept the minimum wage on an inflationary trend line for years. She had a panel that reported, and they did not want to move the minimum wage up anywhere near to what the living wage that people were looking for. And only on the eve of an election, a year and a half or so before an election, did she come up with her two-step $14 minimum wage, and she moved it from $11.40 to $14. And then she said, elect me or re-elect me, and you'll get $15. It was kind of a two-step quid pro quo, and voters didn't buy it. And so they got Doug Ford, who said he would cancel the increase and freeze the minimum wage. So this was not a surprise what Mr. Ford did. And I don't think anybody looks pretty on the minimum wage, or looks handsome, or looks particularly elegant on this. And if the motives of Kathleen Wynne and Doug Ford are to try to get votes or buy votes, so be it. I mean, no one expects purity. And especially union leaders are not looking for purity, not just Smokey Thomas. All union leaders look at these kinds of dynamics as a bargaining. Give me something and you'll get something. And they gave Doug Ford a one-day photo op. Big fat hairy deal. I mean, that's what it takes to get Doug Ford out and cancel the freeze, or the freeze was already over. 2.5-year freeze, by the way, people forget that, and move it up to $15. So be it. I mean, Sheila, like Smokey, has the history of this. She said at the beginning, I think, too little, too late, but she said then better late than never. That kind of sums it up. It's a bit of everything.
Well, okay, Smokey, I'm going to come back at you at this because, you know, for many, many years, unions in this province have made it pretty clear to people at election time that they don't mind if you elect Liberals or New Democrats, or I bet even Greens at some point, but don't vote Tory. And you and Jerry Diaz from Unifor both went out there and said some very nice things about this Premier and about this current government of Ontario, which I think made a lot of people's heads absolutely explode. So I repeat, how could you say what you said?
Well, I don't think it should come as a surprise for me. I am nonpartisan. My union's nonpartisan, but a lot of my executive board and activist base are diehard NDPers. I'm not. And I get into trouble with other labor leaders. There's people that don't like me because I won't endorse a political party. I always say to people, vote your self-interest, but please go vote. And so to go out and say something nice about Doug Ford, when I believe he deserves to have something nice said about him. Now, then, don't get me wrong, we're still fighting with him to repeal Bill 124, to increase ODSB payments and Ontario Works payments for people on social assistance. Still fighting with him over all that stuff. But Martin's exactly right. In my world, I deal with politicians of all stripes. I have for years, and it is quid pro quo in a bit. But for me, I mean, I wouldn't have went out and said that about Doug Ford if he hadn't raised $15 an hour. But I just thought, I like Sheila, I agree it's not enough. We need a conversation about a living wage. But, you know, again, better late than never. And I had a lot of conversations with him about minimum wage and many other issues. And I don't know if he saw the light because of anything I said to him, but I think he saw the light. And if Martin's right, if it's for political purposes, hey, so be it. What do you do from politicians at election time? You extract promises so you can maybe get something down the road. So that's the way it works.
You going to vote for him next June?
Oh, I don't know. I will vote. The only admission I'll ever make about how I vote is that I always voted for Peter Milliken because I thought he was the best MP we ever had, the best Speaker of the House, and a wonderful human being, and I liked him on a very personal level. So that's the only admission I'll ever make of how I vote, but I'll make that one today.
Yeah, Smokey, that's federal and that's Kingston, so that's that. But we're talking provincial, so nice try. Let's move on. I get you. You did mention in that answer, though, Bill 124, which caps all future increases for public servants, including your members, at 1% annually. And Sheila, I wonder if you could come in at this point with your economist's hat on and talk about, on the one hand, minimum wage workers getting a raise to $15 an hour, but on the other hand, in a world where inflation's running at 4.5%, what the 1% cap on salaries does to tens of thousands of people who live in this province.
So it puts tens of thousands of people further behind. And we have to remember that a lot of those workers are low-wage workers. So we are talking about, we're talking about personal support workers, we're talking about cleaners, we're talking about also a lot of people, again, who have not been able to work safely from home over the last 20 months and who have had to put their health and their family's health at risk in order to keep all the rest of us safe, fed, and getting health care. And I think we're really seeing the impact of this on healthcare in particular and on the nursing workforce in terms of both the impact of it, but also very much a psychological impact in terms of, how is the government approaching this very essential workforce?
All right, Martin, I wonder if you could just take us back to when this announcement was made. Usually when this kind of thing is announced, business groups all across the province rise up in anger and say, this is an unfair tampering with market forces. This is going to force a lot of our people out of business, or at least make it more difficult for them. What kind of chorus did we hear this time?
I think they were just going through the motions. I think the restaurant sector, which is suffering greatly for obvious reasons, has also realized that they have to pay their servers and waiters and waitresses a lot more money to retain them because there's so much churn and turnover. Look, you just have to look to British Columbia, where there's an NDP government in power. What's the minimum wage there? $15.20. There's a 20-cent difference. I mean, that's the NDP premium. I'm not trying to bash the NDP here. I'm just saying when the NDP is in power, suddenly the promises change. And you saw that with Bob Rae's NDP in the 1990s, a Smoky reference. So $15 is too low. I mean, but let's not forget, a Canadian economist just got the Nobel Prize for economics for his research on the minimum wage, which showed that it actually is not a job killer, despite what small business and big business will tell you. I mean, when Kathleen Wynne raised the minimum wage to $14, the big banks, the Chamber of Commerce, were giving out these scare stories that there would be 150,000 jobs lost in this province. And it was the opposite. There were more people hired. It isn't actually, it doesn't actually deter hiring. It actually just gives people a minimum wage and actually gives them a more stable workforce. So yes, they complained, but look, let's be realistic here. $15 is nice at a minimum. I shouldn't say nice. It's a bare minimum. But the truth is, the economy has overtaken it anyway. This is more of a recognition of Doug Ford of what's already happened, and it's kind of good symbolism. But in about a year or so, the minimum wage will go up again, and it will take account of these inflationary components, and it'll go up probably about 50 cents next year. Not enough, but a lot more than where it was when it was frozen under Doug Ford 1.0.
Okay, you mentioned restaurants there, and I just want to give people a heads up that we will be focusing in the second half of the program on the restaurant sector and a lot of the challenges economically and otherwise that they're dealing with right now. So just a heads up to viewers on that. I want to read something here. Sheldon, can I get this tweet up here now? This is Beatrice Brusk, president of the Canadian Labour Congress, who had this to say about the minimum wage increase. She tweeted, Ford canceled a planned minimum wage increase which cost low-wage Ontarians thousands of dollars, and during the pandemic, Ford opposed paid sick days. Workers simply cannot trust Conservatives to help them when they need it. Which takes me back to Smokey. Is this emblematic, in your judgment, of a bit of a split in the Labour movement right now, where you are prepared to say some nice things about Doug Ford when you think he's earned them, whereas the CLC president clearly appears not?
Well, the CLC president and the other two officers ran very proudly on the fact that they're NDP. And I actually had serious concerns about that election. It's late that all put the party ahead of workers by times, at least in my view, they do. And so I'm not surprised at what she said at all. But I don't actually, I agree with some of what she said, but it's incrementalism. You get Premier Ford to move on one or two things. You keep pushing them on other things. But my sense of the left is no matter what any party does, especially the Conservatives, it'll never be enough. It'll be too late. They'll find something to criticize. About a third of Labour is Liberal affiliated. About a third is NDP, and about a third are like myself, politically agnostic. So I do run into trouble with NDPers all the time, and some of them don't like me and I don't much care. I got elected to represent OPSEU members, and I just wish that it'd be my view that labor unions should remember who they got elected to represent, and that's the people that pay their dues, not a political party.
Sheila, you're not a political scientist, so I won't ask you to comment from that standpoint, but you are an economist, so I wonder if you could help us understand. At the end of the day, more than 700,000 people in the province of Ontario who make the minimum wage got a raise. I mean, that's the headline the government wants us to see. Is it, in fact, a big deal, in your view, economically, in terms of what that what that additional revenue will be able to purchase or how it might improve their lives?
So I think there are a couple of issues that we have to unpack on that. The first of those is absolutely what Martin was saying. This legislation is in some ways catching up to what is starting to happen in the labor market. I think, which is that there is pressure to increase wages, both because of increased inflation and because of shortages at the low end of the wage scale. So I think, and we do know, we've both from the academic research and from our own experience in Ontario, that an increase in the minimum wage does not actually reduce employment. It actually gives people a little bit more money. But I think a really crucial question is around other kinds of issues, right? If you're talking about improvements in people's lives. Part of that has to do with how many hours are you working? How much notice do you have about how many hours you're working? And in particular, something that Bill 27 didn't address is the fact that temporary agency workers still can continue to be paid less than people who were working absolutely beside them, but who aren't temp agency workers. So, and that's a rollback from the legislation that we had in 2018, where there was equal pay for equal value. So there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of fundamental issues, including permanent paid sick days, haven't been addressed in this legislation.
Having said that, Martin, this government came into power back in 2018, June of 2018, promising to be populist, disruptive, small c conservative. And even though the party is called the Progressive Conservative Party, you sure didn't hear very much about the adjective and you heard a lot about the noun. 3+ years later, where do you think they are right now?
Pivoting. He is a populist more than a progressive conservative. And, you asked a good question of Smokey earlier. Do you trust him? And the truth is that, like it or not, Doug Ford did what he said he was going to do 3 years ago. He said he would cancel the minimum wage, and he did it. And now he's saying, and he is legislating, that he's going to increase it. Should Labor love this government and should they trust this government are two different questions. I mean, the Ford government is hoping that Labor will back off, as you said earlier, and not beat up the PCs in the coming election. And they are trying to win the hearts and minds of labor members, especially in the Southwest, where it's a two-way fight. The Liberals are not in contention, and so they go after blue-collar workers, Tories and New Democrats, both Windsor, Sarnia, that whole area, and so they are trying to win their hearts and minds. But Labor can and does break the heart of every government in power, whether it's teachers unions or other labor unions that went after the NDP. So this is politics. It's there's not unity in the labor movement, and there's certainly disunity on the political front. What I do think this tells us, in the poker sense, it's a tell, is that many of the labor leaders, Smokey, Jerry Dias, are giving up on the NDP. I'm not trying to make the NDP feel bad, but I think they've taken stock of the polling and the trend lines, and it looks like they don't think Andrew Horwath will be the next Premier of Ontario, whether you believe me or not. That's what the polls show too. And so just like they gave up on Kathleen Wynne in 2018, despite her promise of a wage increase, they thought she was dead in the water, and they were right. And so they lined up behind Andrew Horwath. And now they seem to be they're not lining up behind Doug Ford, but they're trying to use their pre-election leverage to lock in an increase. It's like locking in a low mortgage rate. They've locked it in. They gave him a photo op for a day, a one-day wonder. And can they trust him? Probably not. But this is now being legislated into law.
Well, as I always like to remind people, polls are not predictive. They are a great indication of what people thought yesterday. They don't tell you what people are going to do in 7 months' time. But I will ask you this question, Smokey, and that is, when Corey Teneycke, as he may do, the head of the PC campaign for next year, when he calls you up closer to Election Day and he says, Smokey, we had such a good event that day back in October, where you and Jerry came out along with Peter Bethlen-Falvey and Monty McNaughton and the Premier, and everybody was singing out of the same hymn book. Will you do an event for us in this election campaign? What will you say to him?
I'll say no.
How come?
Well, because I'm nonpartisan. I don't endorse any political party. What I endorse is people getting educated on the issues, getting out to vote, go to all candidates' meetings, hold politicians accountable, but I will not endorse any party ever. It's just not in me.
And having said that, given what Martin just said, that you and the labor movement have somehow made a calculation already at this stage that you don't think the NDP has a chance to win the next election, and therefore you're trying to improve your relationships with the other parties. Is that accurate?
Well, I'm not trying to improve my relationship with the Liberals because I can't forget what they did for 15 years. They got a long way to go to earn back respect from myself. No, it's this way, Steve. At the start of the pandemic, the Premier phoned me. He said, Smokey, can we put partisan politics aside and work together to get through this pandemic? I'm telling you, it's going to be horrible. He said, there's lots of time before the next election to stab each other in the forehead if we want. But he said, will you work with me? Your members do the work we need. I said, sir, I'm reaching through the phone to shake your hand, and I'll do that. And my word is good, and I'll work with them in a nonpartisan manner. And I would have to say to everybody watching is that when I have phoned him on issues of serious concern, whether it be long-term care inspectors, Ministry of Labor inspectors, any issue I've called getting PPE in the workplaces where the bosses refuse to do it, he has come through for me every time. So, and that's not because I'm a Tory, but that's because he asked me, can we work in a nonpartisan manner? And I said yes. And looking backwards, I wouldn't have changed my decision at all.
Martin, is that to say, in your judgment, is the Labor vote now in play as it relates to next June's election?
That's a good question, almost a trick question. I don't have any predictions on that. I do know that I do feel that in the Southwest, as I said, the Liberals are not in contention. And so anything's possible in those two-way fights from the Windsor area on up. I think I said that the NDP, that Labour doesn't see Andrea Horwath winning. I don't think they see Del Duca winning either, the Liberal leader. So is it in play? Sure it is. I mean, everyone says Doug Ford's a populist, so we have to ask ourselves, why didn't he promise a $15 minimum wage or a $16 minimum wage in the last election, right? I mean, these are pivots that he makes. These are calculations that Corey tonight is making, and I think we can say deductively that one of the reasons for doing this, in addition to the economy, the labor shortage, and so on, is that they believe that possibly the labor vote is in play. Whether it is on voting day, we'll have to see.
Okay. I want to thank the three of you for coming on to TVO tonight and sharing your views. Smokey Thomas from OPSU, Martin Redcon from the Toronto Star, Sheila Block from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Great discussion, everybody. Stay safe out there, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Steve. Bye.
When the province announced last week that it was hiking the minimum wage to $15 per hour in the new year, it also eliminated what is known as the liquor server's rate. That means a big raise for some and bigger payroll for others. How will that reverberate for those in the restaurant sector? Let's find out by asking, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Corey Mintz. He's the food writer for TVO, among other outlets, and author of The Next Supper, The End of Restaurants as We Knew Them and What Comes After. And in Ontario's capital city, in North York, there's Nikki Charles Page, co-owner with her sisters of the Sugar Cane Restaurant. And in Midtown, Josh Vokey, bartender and server on the Danforth. And it's great to have you three on the program tonight. Corey, start us off here. I think we need a little background. Why was it that servers and or bartenders were actually earning less than the minimum wage in the first place?
Well, this is a common practice all over North America, all over the world where we have tipping custom, which is, of course, not in every country. But basically, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but post-Civil War, when formerly enslaved people entered the workforce, people had to figure out, damn, we used to pay people nothing. How can we still pay them as little as possible? And they borrowed an idea from Europe, the idea of tipping, which is that, like, what if you get people primarily in restaurants and on railroads to work at the generosity of customers, and customers would voluntarily give them something extra, so you didn't actually have to pay them. And eventually, this got to be such a part of our culture that we codified it into laws in the States and in Canada through lower wages that we're able to pay through the justification that the customer actually pays this employee's compensation.
Yeah, I wondered, is it the case that they just assume that you're going to make so much more extra money in tips anyway, therefore we don't have to pay you the minimum wage we pay everybody else? Is that the thinking?
That's the general way it's supposed to work. It doesn't work that way all over. And of course, the restaurant industry is not a monolith. The small family-run immigrant-owned restaurant is very different from the big full-service chains, which is very different from the sort of urban, hip, chef-driven restaurant. In certain restaurants, servers can make a fortune. And in those restaurants, it's typical that they make about double what cooks are making. We're talking about the hot spots in big cities. At many other restaurants, servers are just, whether they're earning tips or not, are still living below the poverty line all across America and Canada.
Gotcha. Okay, Nikki, this obviously is going to have an impact on the way you do business because presumably you're going to have to pay your people more. And I wonder, just for starters, how much of a heads up did you get from whatever sources, government or organizations that represent you, that this train was coming down the track and a $15 an hour minimum wage would be implemented in the new year?
No, we didn't. We weren't. We're hoping that it would happen, and I say hoping because, the cost of living is crazy right now. But not now. We weren't expecting it now.
Now, you say you were hoping it would happen. That is not the typical view of most business people that we talk to. So why do you think this is a good thing?
Well, the only reason why I say hoping is because I have family members and friends that are working minimum wage jobs, and it's not adding up. The cost of living is so high, and they're not making enough to be able to pay their bills and just to basically have live their life. So it's always good for something. Maybe it's always good to have this just in general, but just not now.
Okay, well, okay, that's what I want to get to. How many people have you got who, under normal circumstances, are serving customers at your restaurant?
We have about 5.
And you're going to have to presumably increase their wages now, yes?
Yes.
How are you going to afford to do that?
I don't know. We don't know. That's just, we're now literally sitting down and trying to work out what we can possibly do to make this work, whether it's like raising prices for our customers, which we really don't want to have to do. Is it, there's just so many things that we have to talk about to see where are we going to get this money and how are we going to be able to stay open.
Is it possible that you will have to let somebody go?
That's looking like it, unfortunately, yeah.
So by raising the minimum wage, perversely, you're increasing unemployment as well.
That's right.
Okay, Josh, let me get you into this conversation here. Before the minimum wage hike, I'm going to ask you a really personal question here. How much does a guy who does what you do typically make before, when your minimum wage was a lot lower than the regular one?
It depends. It varies. It depends on the time of the week that you're working. It also depends on seasons. Things in Toronto are very seasonal. The holidays and the peak summertime are the best times to make money. And then in the dead months, which servers kind of refer to as January through March or April, are really, really quiet most of the time. So we kind of operate like squirrels. We save as much money as we can during the busy months, and we try to survive during the quiet ones. So a capable server, like I work at a reputable restaurant, there's a high demand for level of skill as a server. People expect a lot of service. And so based on what my wage is, you can expect that a qualified server should make about double based what their, the server wage plus another double.
Okay, put it in terms I can understand. When you're talking about an annual income, are you talking under the old rules, this is before the new $15 minimum wage comes in, are you talking about an annual income of salary plus tips? You tell me, 20, 30, 40,000 a year, more?
Yeah, well, the qualified server, and again, like Corey was saying, they're very different restaurant models. So people make different money in different restaurant models. I would say in the model that I was in, I'd probably around between 40 and 50.
Okay, so if the new minimum wage goes up to $15 an hour, that's presumably a pretty good-sized pay increase for you. So what are you expecting going forward?
Yeah, it's a pay increase realistically of about $4,000 a year. That is a good pay increase. Now, the thing that you had to keep in mind, though, is that restaurants are going to look for ways to offset that cost immediately. And the way that restaurateurs do it is going to differ. Nikki, for example, she works close to my restaurant, and I know her restaurant well. She's got a good reputation, which is why I know it. So thank you for that. You're welcome. But there are different ways that restaurateurs tend to offset those costs. And because we kind of exist in the shadows, we're not covered under certain workplace legislation that other sectors are. So the first thing that happened the last time in my restaurant that wages went up is they said, well, okay, we're paying you more, but now we need to pay our kitchen staff more because they are willing to quit because they're not making enough now. They also want a raise. So what we're going to do is the tip out, or the tips that you collect in, that a server collects in at the end of their night, they all go into a pool, and then things are kind of divvied up. So the servers keep the bulk of their tips, but a large percentage, usually about a third, goes to the rest of the house. So we're talking the kitchen staff and the other kind of supporting front of house staff. So your hosts, your server assistants, your bussers.
And what'd you think of that idea?
They also collected these.
What'd you think of that idea?
I was fine with it. I mean, we work as a team, and it's important that everybody is taken care of. I also work in a tip pool restaurant. There are different models. So in our restaurant, all of the service team, the head, like the senior service team, we share all of our money. So some people are going to be busier than others on the night, but the point is that we're working for a common good is the mentality.
Gotcha.
And that we're working towards a common goal.
Okay, Corey, let me get Corey back in here for a second, because we have a specific example of how Josh does it as his place. We have a specific example of how Nikki does it at her place. But I'd like you to give us the sort of sector-wide view now from 30,000 feet, Corey, which is if the new minimum wage for servers, waitstaff, et cetera, now goes up to $15 an hour, and we've heard just Nikki say a moment ago, she has no idea at the moment how she's going to deal with that. Play that out over a whole sector. Do you see more people losing their jobs in the restaurant sector as a result of having to incur these additional costs?
I think that's a bit of a distraction. I think anytime you talk about the minimum wage going up, you can cherry pick your quotes from economists who can show you a study from Berkeley, who can show you a study from the University of Vancouver. Like, they'll always find you the evidence to show you, well, if you raise people out of poverty this much, you offset it by pretty much the same amount of unemployment. I think that's a bit of a missing. I think that's a bit of a misdirect.
Well, I'm not quoting an economist. I'm quoting a restaurant owner who is on this program right now. That's what she said might happen.
Yeah, and you know what? People will lose their jobs in the sense that there will be fewer jobs. There will be fewer jobs that pay poorly because the people that have jobs will be paid better.
But presumably there will be fewer jobs in the entire sector that admittedly pay better. Is that preferable to having more people in the sector who make less?
This is something I've wrestled with over the last 2 years, and ultimately my answer is yes.
And how did you get to that conclusion?
Well, we're currently living in a time where the industry is struggling with about a quarter of their employees not coming back at all, right? And these are due to a variety of factors that were not new to most of us paying attention, yet they seem to surprise people when employees weren't coming back. So the rhetoric over the past 5 years when I talked to restaurant owners been like, look, nobody wants to raise prices, right? That's unthinkable. But how do I compensate staff better? How do I buy ingredients that people care about, their ethical and sustainable sourcing? How do I basically increase value for all the shareholders, the stakeholders, without increasing costs? I can't do it. But now we're finding, if I don't have people to run my restaurant, then I don't have a restaurant. And in order to attract people, those wages are going up one way or another. And the only way to factor in that the only way to absorb that cost is to raise prices. They're going up. They're going up by about 4% this year. And it's doubtless that they will continue to go up, right? The price of beef is up 13%. The price of oil for your deep fryer is up 21%.
Yes.
The menu price has to go up. And as long as it's going up, why shouldn't it go to things that actually matter to people, that create better, more sustainable living wage jobs? And $15, by the way, it's not a living wage anywhere in Ontario.
Right. Okay, Nikki, let me get you back in here because I guess we should say by way of background, you've been on this program before and you've talked to us about what it's been like trying to navigate the very choppy waters of the past year and a half under COVID and all the difficulties you've had just trying to keep your head above water. And now here are these new additional costs. Do you think that at the end of the day, you're just simply going to have to charge more for what you do, and that's how you will absorb the costs?
The way it's looking, that's the direction that we're looking at right now, because we're just trying to figure out how we are going to do this and basically stay afloat. So it's looking like somewhere along the line we're going to be having to raise prices, and you really don't want to have to do that. But it's everywhere from the food that we're getting, the cost of food, and like Corey was mentioning, oil. I mean, it's ridiculous, the prices. I mean, even just in the grocery stores, if you're trying to get vegetable or canola oil or whatever else, it's right up, the skyrocket. High. So yeah, I really think that's what it's looking like. We're going to just have to raise prices all around.
Now, obviously, your customers don't want to pay more, but they love you, don't they, Nikki? Are they prepared to pay more in order to enjoy the pleasure of eating at your establishment?
You know what? When people want to have a good time and indulge, they will. And I think, they know they're going to spend some money and they're going to have a good time and they're going to go home. However, I think that's going to cut down a lot. I don't think people are going to go out as much. I don't think people want to spend as much money. And it's going to hurt the small businesses, especially the restaurants.
Well, let me introduce another angle to this story, and this is quite intriguing. Corey wrote a piece on the practice of tipping on our website, tvo.org, and here's some of what he had to say. While Canadians are accustomed to the idea that tipping is voluntary or a necessary mechanism for motivating a specific workforce, that, Corey writes, is nonsense. Tipping hides the true price of a meal. It removes control of restaurant revenue from small business owners, and it enables all manner of endemic problems: sexual harassment, racial bias, income disparity. Just add a bit more to that, if you would, Corey. What are you trying to say here?
I didn't think I was being shy. I'm fairly anti-tipping, have been for a long time. And, this is a cyclical conversation. It seems to rear its head every few years. I think the big shift about 5 years ago was the Union Square Hospitality Group out of New York, eliminating tipping at, I think, 13 of its restaurants. And we tend to go round and round, but tipping is terrible for a variety of reasons. I gave you the bullet points there. The good news is, if you love tipping, if you believe in it, whether as a business owner or as a patron, for whatever reason you love it and you hate me, the good news is it's not going anywhere. It's an entrenched part of our culture, even though it doesn't make any sense. And I think that people should be paid appropriately. And as professionals, we should tell other people what our worth is. It's not going to be changed, but the Ontario government just removed one of the 3 or 4 really solid reasons that any restaurateur who is considering going against the grain and trying to eliminate tipping, they've just removed one of the key reasons for it, which is the sub-minimum wage.
Okay, I guess a couple of follow-ups from that. Josh, do you hate Corey? No, you don't have to answer that. I'm just kidding about that.
No, not at all.
What's your view on this?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what he said. It is a part of the meal. I've thought a lot about this before coming on. To look at it as a gratuity for doing a bonus job is inaccurate. It's not. It is a hidden cost. It is a part of the service. I think it would be more accurate to call tipping a service fee. That's more what it is. It does embolden people to be abusive to servers. I've seen a lot of that in my career. During the pandemic, it's gotten worse. I think a lot of that comes with the expectation that people are coming out during the pandemic, and all of that pent up rage and anxiety is getting taken out a lot on staff at restaurants.
How does it, give us a for instance there. How does it happen?
I had a friend the other day in another restaurant that wasn't my restaurant. There was a woman on the floor, and this is a good restaurant. She makes good money. And she had a breakdown in the middle of her shift. It was just too much pressure. There wasn't enough staff. There was too much work to do. And she just left, walked out the door and didn't come back.
Wow.
And that's common.
And was it because the customers of the day were just sort of being too demanding on her?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of that and the amount of work that needed to be done. There just weren't people to fill the positions. The restaurants are running with skeleton crews. We don't have enough people. I have about 5 on the floor of my restaurant right now, much like Nikki does. We normally run with 20.
Wow.
People don't want to work in restaurants. There was a mass exodus, and it had nothing to do with money. So will the minimum wage increase help? For sure it will help. But there's also a demand for servers that can work at a high level. And a lot of those servers that work at a high level chose to leave during the pandemic and retrain in other areas.
Well, let's make the distinction here, as we have alluded to, that there's a difference between minimum wage and a living wage. And we're going to put some numbers up on the screen here. This is from the Ontario Living Wage Network. And we're going to focus on 5 different areas in the province of Ontario. Sheldon, let's bring this up, shall we? Top of page 4 here. We'll go through a few communities. Here's Chatham-Kent in southwestern Ontario, where a living wage would be $16.33. Not 15, $16.33, and those numbers are 3 years old. I wonder what it's like now. In London, Ontario, and these numbers are today, $16.55 is a living wage. Hourly rates, obviously. In Peterborough, you're up over $18 as a living wage. In Thunder Bay in northwestern Ontario, more than $16 for a minimum wage, and for a living wage, excuse me. And in Toronto, you will not be surprised to hear that a $15 minimum wage doesn't get you very far, that you need to earn more than $22 an hour in order to earn what is considered a living wage. So, Corey, do you anticipate that these kinds of numbers are what we're going to have to see in the restaurant industry in order to get servers to want to work, to like their work, to come back to work?
I love that question. I mean, and just to fill in the blank, the Ontario Living Wage Network just released new numbers last week for this year, and spoiler alert, the cost of living has gone up. $15 isn't a living wage anywhere. It's rare that restaurateurs are willing to challenge the orthodoxy of this system. You know, the reality is, as Josh pointed out, like a server can do well in a hot restaurant and they can take home $30 an hour while the cooks are taking home 15 or 16. I've seen a few years ago, cooks were fighting to get $15, and these days, nobody's coming in for an interview with the offer of less than 17. An example of someone who's really challenging thing is Amanda Cohen. I interviewed her several times for the book, and she just decided this spring, enough. I'm paying all my staff starting $23 an hour. I'm raising prices across the board. And I've seen a handful of restaurants take a similar approach. I've been approached by a restaurant who wants me to talk to them about, like, how can they sort of reconfigure their business this way. And it's exciting. The reality is it's pretty much only at the higher end of the dining spectrum. The restaurant that has patrons that are already paying a pretty high price for eating out, that they can absorb some of those inflated costs. That's to bring it up to the cost of living in a city like Toronto, San Francisco, New York. But there's definitely wiggle room in between.
Nikki, let me ask you, that chart shows that for people to make a living wage in the city of Toronto, it's $22 an hour. Can you afford to pay people that much?
No way. I can't even afford to pay myself that much, just to be honest with you. But yeah, it's it's crazy, the cost of living. That this is what it is. And it really makes you start to think, like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen with some of these small businesses? How do we do this? Like, this is a huge conversation, and that I have to have with my sisters to try and figure out a way to navigate through this, because at the end of the day, it's always going to keep going up, right? And we have to figure out a way to make it work.
Josh, in your world, are there many people, servers, bartenders, whatever, who are making $22 an hour plus tips?
No. There are a couple of living wage restaurants that I'm aware of, and they call it a living wage, and they pay around $22, $23 an hour, like Corey was saying, but it's by and far a very rare thing.
We're down to our last minute and change here. And Nikki, I guess I should ask you this question. Given all of the challenges that we've talked about on the program already, why does anybody in their right mind go into this business?
You know what? It's again, it comes to the passion of what our passion is. Food. We love to serve food. We love to have people try our food and taste our food. And I think that is, that is the main thing. And you're hoping at you're not going to get rich, and we kind of figure this going into it, but you're hoping at least that you can make a decent living. And now that's question, and that idea is being challenged, and that's what we really need to think about.
Josh, last minute to you. Why does somebody do what you do?
It's like Nikki said, it's passion. We appreciate and we love food and spirits and having a good time and setting that ambiance for people. And it's a skilled trade. It's a trade that we learn because some people want to stay in it for life, and others use it as a means to put money in their pockets so that they can train themselves to do what they really want to do, or supplement their dreams and their small businesses. That's why we do what we do.
Well said. Corey Mintz, the food writer and author, we thank you for being on the program tonight. Josh Vokey, bartender, server on the Danforth. Nikki Charles Page, go check out her restaurant, Sugarcane, that she runs with her sisters. It's always a delight to have you guys on the program. Thanks for joining us tonight on TVO.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And that is the agenda for Wednesday, November 10th, 2021. Tomorrow, of course, is Remembrance Day, and we'll mark the occasion with 3 stories that recall some of the sacrifices made by Canadians and their allies over the past 100 years. Hope you'll be with us for that. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
The Agenda is always on. To catch up on conversations from this week or any week, visit our website, tvo.org/theagenda, or our YouTube page at youtube.com/theagenda. It's all there for whenever you want to watch.